lately I've been really getting fascinated by the early 50s road racing of California.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a whole nother massive rabbit hole to go down.
Right, and it's not just the Pebble Beach road races.
No, that was just happened to be one of them.
Right.
It was only for a few years.
Right.
But there were road races everywhere around California. It was the big thing to go see. Which brings us to the Spider. I think you wanted to talk about the Porsche Spider that I found in the shipping container.
Yeah.
Right, and how that came about.
Yeah.
That's one of probably the most exciting thing that happened to me last year was finding this Porsche Spider, because this is a multi-million-dollar car. One of the reasons that I found this car is because of my interest in so many different things. Like motorcycles is obviously a big interest of mine. I've had a lot of fun with vintage bikes. So is my buddy Grant. He's a hardcore, a bike guy. He puts on Born Free, that great show. So he heard about some old motorcycles for sale, and he went up to this guy's house and to look at these bikes. And so I got a call from him one day, and he's like, "Hey, do you know anything about Porsches?" And I'm like, "A little. I know a little. I don't know a lot." He's like, because there's a bunch of bikes here. We're going to buy some of these bikes, but the family's got this car and they want to sell it too. I said, well, I'll come up and take a look. And he had said Porsche Spider. And so I just assumed it was one of the fiberglass copies made in the 80s or 90s, right? Because those are really the only ones you really ever stumble on. So I was going up there expecting to find a fiberglass, Spider. And so I get up there and start talking to the family, and the more I start talking to the family, I realize, well, this isn't just a copy.
Car.
No, I mean he had a photo album, of getting the car in the early '60s.
Oh boy.
And I'm like, okay, well, let's go look at it, because I figured, well, maybe it had been hacked up really bad, or some Corvair engine stuffed in it. Who knows?
Yeah,
right?
because it sounds too good to be true.
Yeah, exactly, right. So we're up on this hill in Orange County that no one in their right mind would drive up to. This crazy steep road, and the only reason you use the road is it's a service road for some radio tower who's at the top of the hill. He just happens to own property next to it, and the family had built this weird, funky little house in the 40s, neat place. And he was a Porsche guy early on, and he had a 904. He had a Speedster. Then after the 80s, he got into motorcycles, and he kind of, put the Porsches aside, and he put this Spider in a shipping container in the back of the house overlooking a cliff. And I think it was for security. Sure. I think it was like, okay, no one's going to steal this thing. And that was it. And then he passed away, and the family goes up, and then they need to sell everything. And so I get up there, and I'm looking at this car, and I'm like, it's aluminum. It's not fiberglass. It's got a 4-cam racing engine in it. I'm like, I think this is the real thing. And we started going through the photo album, and there's like letters from Porsche back in the 60s talking about the car he has, and really fascinating. And so at that point, obviously, the family knew what it was worth. So I had no expectation whatsoever of getting it for myself, which would have been great, but no chance. So I really wanted to be the person to sell it for the family, because the family was like, hey, whoever sells this car first person to show up with this much money can take the car. And I'm like, I gotta find a buyer for this, because I'm like one of those orphan leaders. Like I gotta find homes for all these cool things,
right?
All these orphaned antiques. So I had a friend that I knew a lot about rare Porsches, and I gave him a call, and he happened to be in town because he lives in another state. And we went up there and got together, and we made one phone call and got the car sold.
Oh, I don't doubt it. I mean, that's a holy grail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely a holy grail. So, and for someone like me, as deep into cars as I am and passionate about cars as I am, those things never go through my hands. Guys like me, they go through Gooding and Bonhams and Sotheby's, that type of thing. So I felt very accomplished in a weird way to get to sell this car. And I also had, I can't call it seller's remorse because it wasn't my car to sell, but I did feel depressed for a few days because I had spent so much time with the car. Many days going up there, rolling it out, rolling it in, pictures. We took some video, sitting in it, getting to know a car that rare, and then having to see it go away in a trailer. I was actually a little depressed. It was the weirdest thing. I never thought I'd feel that way, but I felt really bummed.
That doesn't surprise me because you were developing an emotional connection to the car.
Yes, inadvertently.
Yeah.
And, things like that have spirits.
Yeah.
Old buildings have spirits. Objects of desire have spirits and ghosts. And I feel like I've always been very sensitive to picking up those things and like maybe in a weird way communicating with them.
Yeah.
Completely. I'm not talking hocus pocus here. I just mean, I feel like these older spirits see me as an old soul and know that I'm gonna kind of take care of them, which I try to do.
Yeah, there is something to that sense of channeling the past and the former caretakers, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One good example of that, the bowling alley.
Yeah, let's talk about the bowling alley because it looks amazing.
Thanks. Well, I can't take all the credit because, this place was built in 1927.
Right.
I just took it back to its true nature, really. It had been remodeled over so many years. There were layers and layers. There were 2 layers of drop ceiling. There were walls built. It was completely covered from the original surfaces. Mm-hmm. And so I was just able to strip it all back and kind of restore the parts that needed to be restored. So I just let it shine. And I had a guy working. He was a glass and metal guy. He was working there for like a month or so. And I remember he came up to me one day and he said, there's a lot of ghosts here. And I was like, really? He's like, yes, there's a lot of ghosts here. And he's like, and they're all really happy what you're doing. And I totally got chills, Yeah. And I was like, awesome. That's great. That's like the greatest compliment ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't care what anyone writes about this place. Having a ghost tell you this is great what you're doing. And it started maybe making me think like, there's definitely places that are like haunted, like bad, not in a good way, But if you think about, let's take the idea of your soul or where you would spend the afterlife, right? Most likely you're going to spend it somewhere you were having a lot of fun. Maybe the bar you hung out at and party or the bowling alley you hung out at. And so I kind of get the sense of when I'm doing a lot of these restoration projects that the spirits that are there are party spirits. You know what I mean? Like they just want to hang out and party and see their friends. And so I'm just helping them do that.
That's interesting. Now, if there was one guy who was building amazing cars and really a trailblazer in the early 20th century, it was Harry Miller. But there was a driver who was the cream of the crop, and that was Barney Oldfield.
Barney Oldfield. So Barney Oldfield started out like many race car drivers racing bicycles, because that was the hot ticket before car racing. Really, was these velodromes and these bicycle racing, and so he was one of those guys. So Henry Ford creates this big giant car, the 999. Funky looking thing. Nothing like any Ford that ever came after that. Just it wasn't even a steering wheel. It was like this tiller rod thing.
It was like a double tiller.
Yes. Yeah. It was this thing with 2 handles and so he wanted at the time, I think he wanted to beat the Chevrolet brothers because they were making strides. And so he wanted to set up a race. So he needed to find a race car driver. Well, they didn't exist, right, at the time. So where do you look? You look, so they was like, well, this guy's really fast on a bicycle. I bet he is a daredevil and he'll take this thing around. So that's what happened. So he found Barney Oldfield, and he was young at the time. And he said, Barney, do you think you can pilot this thing and beat these guys? And he said, yeah, I think I can do that. And so he did. And so that just launched Barney Oldfield into stardom.
And now we're talking like 1904?
Yeah, or 06 or 8.
Right.
It's real early.
Yeah.
It's real early. And so Barney Oldfield was an overnight sensation, and it goes to his head completely. I mean, the guy becomes a complete ham. He's a complete showman. He's got a cigar. You never see a picture of him without a cigar in his mouth. He's got all these catchphrases, and he's being written up in the papers constantly. He's breaking speed records. He's doing daredevil stunts. He's racing a biplane, or he's having the guy in the biplane come down a ladder and hop in his car. And they're doing, all these funny, he's traveling the country, doing shows. And then he's racing, of course, because he kind of, started racing, and he's racing on dirt tracks and dirt roads and whatnot. So he became probably at the time the most famous race car driver, if not the most famous person in the entire country. I mean, you had Lindbergh, of course, and you had guys like that. And so this is way before television, slightly a little bit of radio. But if you were on the front page of a paper nationwide, you were the famous person of the day that time. Nowadays, you just end up in the trash can. But
Right.
At the time, you were big. And so Barney Oldfield was big. And so I always liked Barney because he was just a showman. He made a lot of fun out of what he did, but he was also good. He won a lot of races. He was a daredevil. And then later in his career, when he retired, he went into the bar business. So he owned bars around Los Angeles, several bars. So I kind of have this weird, kinship with Barney Oldfield. And so he's buried in this Culver City cemetery. And he raced, obviously, Culver City a lot before the board track was torn down. And so years ago, I ended up getting a little bar in Culver City. And when faced with the task of what to do with it, I immediately thought Barney Oldfield. I want to do a little tribute to Barney Oldfield and tell the story, to tell Barney's story to people who've never heard about Barney Oldfield.
Right.
So that's Oldfield's Liquor Room.
Golden Submarine.
Yes, one of the greatest cars ever built.
Yeah. What do you know about that car? Because I'll confess I don't know really anything about it.
Well, it's a Miller car. Harry Miller built it.
Right.
And Harry Miller built it before he had, this is back when those big giant motors I was talking about, before he had created the double overhead cam engine. So it has a ginormous 4-cylinder in it. It's big hunk of aluminum.
And it was a very early attempt at streamlining.
It was an extremely early attempt at streamlining. It was a dangerous attempt at streamlining. The gas tank of the Golden Sub was a round metal ball, and it just sat behind the driver. And those cars were getting banged around a lot in the teens, on these tracks. They were hitting each other, hitting walls. And so it caught on fire. And Barney Oldfield was able to bail out of it, with just a few burns on him. But it was a death trap. And I think Barney Oldfield even called it a death trap. So it only had a good year's worth of racing in that streamlined, full body incarnation. And then the next year they cut the roof off. So you see, if you follow the photo timeline of it, it's that for the beautiful, year, maybe year and a half, and then the roof's cut off, and then it gets stripped down to basically nothing. And they kept racing it, and it slowly became not as successful because new engines were coming out every year. But that's the golden sub. And so there were small little remnants of the golden sub left. And a guy named Buck Bodeman back in the 80s had found a few of these remnants, and he built the full car. A guy named Dan Davis down in Florida owns it now. A great Miller collector. He's got a really nice collection.
They're amazing cars. All doesn't matter which one. All Millers are just absolute gems.
Well, each one's a work of art, handmade.
Yep.
Yeah. Geez, Bugatti gets so much credit for some reason, and I think just because he made a lot more of them, but that doesn't necessarily mean they were better. Miller only built cars for special clients to go racing. He never built a passenger car to buy on the market.
Well, and he was doing crazy stuff like front-wheel drive, and I think inboard brakes.
Yes.
And early hydraulic brakes, if I'm not mistaken. He was tinkering with that earlier than most.
Yeah, he advanced a lot of the technology. And the front-wheel drive thing around 1924, 25 was really dominating Indy at the time. It was very proven to work.
Yeah. Fascinating stuff. We should mention another venture that you've kind of started recently, which is kind of a vintage clothing line. And I'm really curious about this because, LA is a great place for vintage clothing. Again, we're back to Hollywood with wardrobe departments and period costume. And so it seems like it's only natural, given your other interests, that you decide, I'm going to make some really authentic vintage clothing. Yeah,
well, I think that, like my love of all things vintage, I got into vintage clothing really early.
Sure.
My first car was a 57 Chevy when I was 16. And to me, I kind of felt weird driving the car around without kind of, fitting the look and feel of the car.
Some Levi's and a t-shirt.
Basically, yeah. Leather jacket and
right.
kind of just time travel with the car. I love the time travel. Any event I can go to or a moment, even if it's just a fraction of a second where it feels timeless, that's kind of what I strive to do all the time. And so clothing kind of took off. When we finished the Old Crow belly tank, my friend Coop, who was a really great artist, I was a big fan of his work, he wanted to do a logo for the car, so I said, awesome, let's do it. So he created this great crow and smoking a cigarette and a top hat, and we made a t-shirt out of it, because when you go racing at Bonneville, you sell t-shirts, and it helps pay for the gas money. And they were a huge hit, and we basically sold the exact same t-shirt for 20 years, and it's still relevant today. People still love that design.
Well, Coop's original artwork was just, it hit the spot. It just nailed it.
Yeah. There was a line quality to his work that really nails it. And so, I don't really know anything about the clothing business, or I didn't. So I never really pursued that myself, but then I was approached by some friends, hey, would you like to design the clothes and we'll make them? And that's something that sounds great. I love designing things. And so that's how it turned out. It turned out I met these guys in Japan, and I was huge fans of their clothing already. They had a store in Harajuku, which is kind of like the Hollywood or Melrose of Tokyo.
Yeah.
And I went to Japan. I got invited to Japan 2013 with the Old Crow to show at the Moon Eyes show. And so I had been to Japan once 13 years prior and had a really neat experience, but I hadn't been back. So in 13 I go, and I was blown away. I was exposed to this world of Japanese kids who are almost more into American vintage and Americana than I am. Like, they went further down any rabbit hole than I ever went to, with their brand of denim and color of denim. And I mean, they really got into it. And I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. Because anytime I meet someone else who is doing something to preserve Americana, like I'm really fascinated. I instantly attracted to them.
Sure.
So I met all these like-minded people in Japan, and I thought, this is just incredible. And they're buying up the motorcycles and the cars, and they're preserving them so well, and they use them there, and they show them off, and they get samples of old clothing, and they just completely make the most perfect replica of that clothing. So, up until that time, if you wanted to dress, like your heroes dressed, or just dress better in general, usually you were buying vintage clothing.
Sure. Because that's all there was.
Because that's all there was. But suddenly, you could buy a brand new piece of clothing that looked exactly like, a denim shirt made in the 30s or 40s. And a lot of that stuff didn't survive. A lot of that, what they call workwear, didn't really survive that well because it got ripped and torn and burned and tossed away because it was just for working. And they were recreating it, and I just loved it. And so when they got the chance to work with them and give them inspiration, because that the rabbit hole of clothing the Japanese got into started with denim, started with Levi's and jeans, got into more workwear style clothing. But vintage racing wear has its own aesthetic that they never really kind of touched too much base on. So I was kind of excited to get together with them and kind of expose them to that world. One of my favorite things, you look at the guys that were racing these Indy cars in the 1920s, and they were literally wearing Argyle sweaters.
I know.
They're cashmere, like these. You didn't really have much at the time. And then the mechanics had the jumpsuits, which always looked cool. And you had these little caps. They didn't even have helmets, but yeah, you usually had a tie, a collared shirt, an Argyle sweater, and even the guys, these board track guys racing Indians, 100+ miles an hour with a striped sweater on.
Yeah, like a football jersey and knee boots.
Exactly. Yeah, jodhpurs and knee boots.
Yeah.
But man, these guys look friggin' cool.
They did.
They look like the pilots. They were kind of emulating the World War I pilots at the time. And
Definitely.
Those guys looked way cool.
Well, and for that matter, Eddie Rickenbacker was racing cars on the boards.
Yes, yeah, and created his own car company.
Yep, that's right.
Which is short-lived, but yeah. So I was super excited. So we started Old Crow Clothing, and every season or twice a year, I just get to, design what I think, I usually try to pick a theme for that year. Like we did a nautical theme, we've done a board track theme, we've done a dry lakes theme. So I always try to just do something. It's just a fun extension of everything else that I do to kind of preserve history, tell a story, keep Americana alive.
Right. And obviously this is small production.
Very small. Yeah, I think there's 10 stores.
Yeah.
And none in the U.S. We just started a website, though,
Yeah.
oldcrowclothing.com. So you can buy it. They'll ship it over from Japan.
By the way, anything we mentioned, I'll put links in the show notes so people can just
Good.
click right on it.
Yeah, that'd be good. That'd be awesome.
It's easy that way.
Pebble Beach?
Yes. Okay. So, sorry. I bet that was hot.
It's all right.
I was at Pebble. You and I saw each other at Pebble Beach this year, and you guys were wearing the most amazing vintage, authentic style jumpsuits.
Thanks.
And you were there with a Miller race car.
Yes, that was incredible.
Yeah.
I had never really been exposed to Pebble Beach much. I knew some people who went every year and some people who showed, but I never really got a chance to go to Pebble Beach because it's always the same time as Speed Week. So I'm usually always at Bonneville that year, so I can't do both. And so I've taken a few years off of Bonneville because I've been so busy with some of the bar projects. So I got the chance to go, and they just happened to have a Miller class. It was supposed to be for 2020, which was obviously canceled. So I submitted my application, I think at the end of 19. And luckily the car was accepted. I'm so fortunate to, have gotten in with the Miller crowd, and I joined the Miller Club and started doing vintage racing with the Miller Club. and I was able to actually track down a real Miller race car. And it was Ralph De Palma's last race car of his career. So just extremely lucky, extremely rare thing to get. But it's one of my treasures. And so I was so happy to be able to show it off at Pebble Beach with all the other amazing Millers that were there. And I really loved Pebble. And so of course we made these matching jumpsuits to match the car, because that's just what you do. Sure. At least that's in my mind, that's just what you do. I didn't want to wear a blazer and a yellow tie like everybody else, So me and my crew and my wife, and the guys in Japan made them for us.
And they did a great job. And you also had a vintage car carrier, which is it, a 40?
It's a 40 Ford.
Okay.
Yeah. It started out as a fire truck, and it became a ramp truck. And I had submitted it to them because, I have a lot of photographs of guys in the 20s and 30s taking their Miller race car to go racing, and they're always on a transporter. They didn't just drive those cars.
Right.
And so I submitted pictures to the staff of Pebble Beach, and I said, hey, I'd love to represent this. I'd love to recreate this, and for the tour, and I think it would help tell the story of the Miller race cars, and they thought so too. Yeah. So I was really fortunate to be able to take the car on the carrier and do the tour, and we had the Miller sign, and then we had some checkered flags, and kind of made a show out of it.
You also last summer had the opportunity to run the car in Milwaukee, right? At a Miller meet.
That's right. The Miller meet. The club gets together. Everyone brings Millers. It's the only time of the year you get to see Millers not only just running, but actually driving on a track.
Yeah. And not driven gently, right? I mean, you guys...
Yeah, I mean, we don't... I wouldn't say anyone tries to blow their engine up, because these cars are so valuable. But, I try to get out there and do, 75 and 90 miles an hour. Yeah. Because you want to feel...
What they felt.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah,
or really as close as you can to it.
Fantastic. So now that you're moved in here, things have kind of settled. What's going on next?
I'm currently working on, outside of automotive, I guess I could say, working on saving another famous LA icon. There was a hot dog stand called the Tail of the Pup, which was a giant hot dog. And you would order, in the window of the giant hot dog. And that was iconic, not only 40s, 50s, 60s, it was iconic in my generation. I remember in 1980 seeing it. It was right on the sidewalk. It wasn't tucked away anywhere. So if you drove around LA, you saw it. It was right in your face. And you couldn't not see it. It's a giant hot dog.
Wasn't it on Beverly Boulevard?
It was La Cienega Beverly.
Okay.
Yeah, it was there before the Beverly Center, but it was a programmatic architecture building, but it was one of the longest lasting, and thriving. The barrel, the Idle Hour barrel, was shuttered for 35 years, but the hot dog was a working hot dog up until 2005, and the owners passed away. But luckily, the kids put it in storage. They knew the building,
was significant,
and they put it in storage. And it finally found its way to us. Now that we are the caretakers of LA history and the restorers of artifacts, people call us now. Yeah. So we're in construction now, a great location in Hollywood, close to the original location. So that's in the works now. As far as automotive goes, what's next? We will get back to Bonneville. We will pick up where we left off there. And I have a few more Miller race cars being built and in the works.
Wow, that's exciting.
Yeah, and we're working on this 27 Stutz boat tail speedster.
Yep.
And I broke my rule. I had my first car was a 57 Chevy, which would break down all the time. And after I got rid of that car, and I got into a hot rod, I built a hot rod. I made a rule. I said, I'm not going to own a car again unless I can push it myself. You know, even if I can only push it 20 feet myself, if I can't, I don't want to own it. But this Stutz, of course, completely broke that rule. It takes like 4 people to push this Stutz. Yeah. It is so heavy.
It's a big car.
It is a behemoth.
It's not that long, but it's just every piece of metal, the gauge on it, and it's a hefty car.
And the scale of it, everything on it is just larger. Mm-hmm. You know, almost like a truck.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's big and heavy.
It's a cool car. Well, you got your hands full, Bobby.
Yeah, always something to do.
Thanks for having us today.
Hey, thank you so much.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.